Hi guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to go over the hanging pawns structure, which is basically um, pretty similar in some way to the isolated pawn structure, and it's basically when you have two pawns that can also protect each other, but around these two pawns there aren't any other pawns on these two files, and these two structures are pretty connected because you can get the isolated pawn from the hanging pawns and the hanging pawns from the isolated pawns. And I can show you this quickly here. In this position that I made up, there aren't any pieces because I just wanted to show you this. For example, if I want to move here and I play e5, I can get an isolated pawn here. This will happen a lot of times when you have hanging pawns. You will push your pawns and your opponent is going to exchange it. But you can also get the isolated pawn position from the hanging pawns pawn structure, and this happens when you have, let's say, a knight here and your opponent has a knight here and he takes it, if you can imagine, and you take it with a pawn, and then you have this pawn here, and then you have these two hanging pawns here. Maybe because there is no pawns from these files to protect them. So that's why these two structures are really connected to each other. And the hanging pawns are really double-edged because they can be dangerous in attack when they start marching off the board, but they can also be pretty weak because of these files here, because other pawns can't protect them. And if, let's say, this one moves, this pawn moves, then you leave squares behind it. He can just use his pieces to occupy these squares, which is probably going to be pretty bad for you. And that's why you want to push your hanging pawns at the right time, because if you don't, you're going to get a very bad position. And if you do push them at the right time, at the right moment, then you're probably going to get a pretty good position. So it's very important to know when to push your hanging pawns. Hanging pawns are most of the times a little bit better than isolated pawns because, as you can see, they control really a lot of squares here. They really have this fifth rank under control, so that's a pretty good thing about hanging pawns. They control a lot of squares. They give you more space than the isolated pawn, I mean even more, so that's why they are pretty good, but they can also become a weakness, especially in the end game. So I would say three strengths about hanging pawns are: first one is that they control really a lot of squares in the center. The second strength of the hanging pawns is their mobility, because you can move them whenever you want, but you have to do it at the right moment, because like I said, your position is probably going to get pretty cramped and pretty worse if you leave these important squares behind you and if you don't play this move at the right moment. And now the third strength of the hanging pawns is you can regroup your forces behind these two pawns and just prepare for this moment to advance your pawns, and or this one, and because it really gives you a lot of space here and time to really regroup your forces. Now your opponent is probably going to try to fight against these hanging pawns, and he's most probably going to do this by his first plan actually is to play here g6 and just control these two squares, so he's prepared when one of these pawns move. He will have more protection on these squares, so he has just one more defender of these squares. And then the second plan is to challenge these pawns with, let's say, a move like this sometimes, and you're really attacking it and he is going to have to move probably, and then you can see these squares left behind this light squares here are really weak, and your opponent can, I don't know, jump with his knight there or with his rook and attack this pawn here, which has no protection from the other pawns. So these are your opponent's plans. If you have hanging pawns, he's just going to try to attack them and prevent you from expanding with these pawns. So let's go to one example. Okay, so I'm going to show you two plans for a player with the hanging pawns here, as you can see. There are probably more plans than just two. I mean, it's different from a position to position, but I think there are three main plans, but these two that I'm going to show you are the most important because they are general uh, general plans for a player with hanging pawns. So in this position, Black used the first plan. He just pushed his pawn forward, his d pawn, and activated his piece, and also attack the opponent's pieces and his king. So the first plan is to attack, and he just played d4 here. And if you're wondering why white didn't take this pawn, because it looks like he just wins a pawn, right? But actually black can play the intermediate move bishop to c6, and now this of course doesn't work, so that's why he has to move his queen. uh, if he moves it to c4, then you can just take the pawn, and there are always going to be problems with this spin here, so that's why you can play bishop to f3. And what has no better move than to take this rook, because you're also attacking this rook and this queen, so he can take this, you take it, he takes the bishop, and now this position here is probably better for black, so that's why white didn't want to play this. So he moved his knight to e2, and now you can see the purpose of this pawn push. He opens his bishop and he's going to try to um, attack white's king, and you'll see how he did it. Now black took on the e3 square and white recaptured, and now black played c4. As you can see, he's attacking this pawn here. It was really the right time to advance this pawn. He's also opening this bishop, maybe he's going to jump here, but not right now. So white blocked this attack on the pawn with moving the knight to this pretty good square. No pawns can attack him. So black moved his queen because it wasn't really useful here anymore. And now he's attacking another pawn. So he played knight to h4, and if you're wondering again why he didn't play this, it's because of this move, check, and it's a fork. Because if you take, he takes again, and now he wins your queen. That's why this pawn is actually protected. And that's why he played queen to e5, and he's attacking this pawn again. Now he moved this h1 square, and the black moved on this g8 square, because now both pawns can't really be defended, and black is just going to win one of them. And to look at this amazing bishop here, it's really a great attacking piece. The knight is probably going to, yeah, the knight is going to join the attack also, as you will see. Okay, now black just takes one pawn here, and white decides to trade. He attacks the bishop, and now black tries to exchange the bishops to get his knight to a better square. And this bishop was just pretty annoying here, looking here to do some sacrifices probably, So that's why he tried to exchange them. And now black has some nasty threats here already. So white moved his rook because of this, but black still checked him, attacked his queen, and now this is not so much important. He just moved his pieces from the squares that white was attacking. Black has now really good threats, as you can see. Uh, if black was to move here, let's say this would be just mate here. That's why he has to defend, and he went to this uh, h1 square. But still, this is really a very hard position. Now black just, I believe, took this pawn, yeah, and now he again has really amazing threats here, like this again. And so now that's why white took the knight, and this position now is just winning for black because he's an exchange up and also one pawn up, and both players were in time trouble. They continued with a few moves more, but this is really a decisive advantage, really just a winning position. So in this game we looked at moving your pawns, your hanging pawns, in order to open your pieces and attack your opponent's king. Now the second plan is if you don't have attacking plans or just plans on activating your pieces. Let's say if your bishop was here, this move would probably come to your mind, but here your bishop is not here, so you don't have really attacking plans in this position. That's where the other plan comes out, and this is to push your other pawn and not for attacking purpose. So you want to play this move here, c4, because you get more space, and you can also in the future attack this pawn here, because it's going to move harder when this pawn is here, because this b3 square is defended one more time from black side. So that's also why I want to play this move. It's true that you're giving away let's say this outpost here for the knight or for the rook, but you for exchange you get the attack on this pawn and more space. Also you can move your knight let's say here, that's also an advantage, so it's good for both sides, and it depends on who is going to take the most from it. So in this position, okay, black first played queen to b6, queen to a3, and now he played c4, attacking the bishop. He had to move, and now you can see if black played something like rook here, he could already attack this pawn, and it couldn't move. Let's say like this, it couldn't move because of this. I mean here it probably could because this pawn falls, but you know what I mean. This pawn is just giving more protection to this square. But he played a5 here, and he's going to try to exchange queens because he's going to have pressure on these two pawns. Let's say if the queens comes out, he's going to have pressure here. So okay, white activated his other rook, and black tried to exchange queens, but white just jumped on this square here, and he's going to try to attack this pawn as much as he can because this pawn here moved, and now this pawn has no protection from other pawns. That's the right plan here from white, and black just defended this threat successfully, and the game is balanced now. White still didn't want to trade queens. Now this move wasn't very good. Probably coming into the action with the king would be better, because the queens are going to trade off, and you want to have king close to the action when all the pieces exchange. But okay, he plays knight to b1, and now you can see this pressure here on this pawn, and it can't move. So that's why this move was good. And now white defended this threat, and black just exchanged the queens. Now it's really beautiful how balanced the game is, because black has pressure against this pawn, and white has pressure against this pawn. So both sides have something to play for, and that's really amazing to see. So black wants to double up here and just really attack this pawn, but in this position white can take this, and there are tactics. That's why he can't play this right now, and that's why he played king to f8, activating the king. And now white tried to just break this structure here, and black took the pawn. We see some exchanges, and now, as I said, black just put his knight on this pretty nice square where it can move to pretty useful squares in the future, or there, attacking this pawn even more. And also you can see how we got an isolated pawn from the hanging pawn structures again. You can see it here. This happens really a lot. And here white played this bad move, rook to d4. He should fight instead of playing this, because this is really a bad move, because black can win this pawn here and now exchange the rooks like this. And now this position is just winning, because black just comes there with his king and just helps his pawn to promote. We're going to discuss these kinds of positions in the endgame series, but of course this is winning. So in this example we showed the other plan that you can follow when playing with the hanging pawn structure. Now let's quickly summarize the hanging pawns structure. The strengths of this structure are: first strength is that they can be very dangerous when they march up on the board, and they can open your pieces up and you get more space. Like I said, by pushing your pawn forward, opening your bishop, and getting these squares for your knight, for your queen, for your rooks. Basically all the pieces get more space when you move these pawns, and you have also one rank in full control, like you can see here. And their mobility also, they can move wherever they want, but you can prepare this behind these pawns. You can just organize your army, and then at the right moment push these pawns when you think is the right moment. And the bad thing about the hanging pawns is that they don't have protection from other pawns from these two files, so they're pretty weak sometimes. Your opponent can attack them and just make them go forward and leave weak squares behind them, or even just capture them. So that's why you don't want to lose any time, and you want to uh, really do things faster than your opponent, because if you don't, then your pawns are going to be in danger. In this video I told you two plans. When you play the hanging pawns, you want to attack. This is the first one. When you push your pawns, you're going to open up, let's say, your bishops, your pieces, and this gives you the opportunity to attack your opponent. And you also attack your opponent by just pushing these pawns up the board and just creating threats and fixing the opponent's pieces, like we also said. You can just push your other pawn and fix a pawn like we saw here. This b2 pawn, we can fix it by playing c5 and I don't know, then rook to b8 for example, if this was possible, if this pawn wasn't loose. And then this pawn couldn't move and we can double up here and just have pressure against this pawn. And also when we played c5, c4, we won a tempo on this bishop, and we got more space, let's say, for a knight maneuver to this fine c5 square where it can move, I don't know, here if it's possible to d3 square. But the bad thing about both these pushes of the pawn is that you leave bad squares behind, of course, and your opponent is going to try to attack your pawn, and of course this pawn, which is less advanced because it has no protection from the other pawns. If you stick to these plans and rules while playing with the hanging pawns or against the hanging pawns, you should handle these positions really better. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.